why. Let me tell you why. Because when you apply for food stamps, all you get, you get stamps, and the only thing you can use it for is food. So you can't spend the money that the government or whatever agency is giving you on anything but food. So whether or not what you do in your recreational personal life has no effect on what you spend that food stamp money for. So to drug test somebody and not give them food stamps and let them go hungry is, in my opinion, that's not justice at all.
I believe that drug tests should not be mandatory in order for you to be eligible for food stamps, just because of the reason that, they're wasting a lot of money on this. And I happened to take a drug pee test, but got my friend to do the peeing for me. She's going into the military. That's a clean piss. And I really think it's a waste of money for companies, organizations to put that money into there, because really you should be only drug testing for cocaine or some type of hard drug, but really THC, is it tetrahydrocannabinol? THC.
I do not think that drug testing should be mandatory, because I think that kind of targets the poor people. I think that, if you think that drug testing should be mandatory for food stamps, you should also think that it should be mandatory for scholarships, financial aid, things like that. I don't think that you should only target the lower class, because I think that, number one, it's an invasion of privacy, and number two, it's just based on stereotypes about people that aren't necessarily true.
No.
I don't think that drug tests should be mandatory for people who are applying for food stamps, because I think the whole premise of it is archaic. And I think that it's this neoconservative kind of weird big brother fascist radicalist ideal that people are trying to follow, under the assumption that anyone who is impoverished is automatically impoverished because they are addicted to something. And even if they are addicted to something, that we shouldn't provide them help, and that we should let them starve, and they shouldn't receive the same benefits that other people receive, simply because they're suffering the effects of the things that their environment produced around them. So.
Oh, it's okay.
Well, the food stamp program is financed by the taxpayers of the U.S., and so they're very interested, I'm sure, in knowing how their money is spent and who are using the food stamps. So if there's something illegal in terms of drugs or what have you, I think that definitely should be taken into consideration.
I don't think that drug tests should be mandatory for people applying for food stamps, because I don't really see the correlation between being drug tested and having assistance with buying groceries. So I think that's kind of an invasion of privacy.
I think drug tests should be mandatory. In any case that taxpayers' money is being used for programs like that, whether it's some form of welfare or anything like that, I think it's good to know that the people that are receiving the benefits are actually going to be able to provide for their families rather than use it for other things. And when it comes to drug testing, it would probably be a positive thing in that regard for making sure that those who receive these benefits are actually going to put them to greater use rather than the wrong use.
I feel as though that it shouldn't. I mean, I think there's a lot of people going around kind of screwing the system with certain things. I know a lot of people who, use other people's kids for benefits towards taxes. So I don't think you could be that strict about anything. I mean, if I did crack and I needed food, hey, I need food regardless of what I do. I think that, I guess drug problems, is a personal issue that you have to deal with, but I don't think that the government should get involved with that. I think, like I said, I think that's a personal issue that you have to deal with, but I still think it's fair for them to feed anyone who, who is eligible and who are able to get food stamps. I don't think that that their drug use should be a problem, honestly.
I don't think drug testing is relevant to applying for food stamps, because it's only like one source of currency. Like, you're only getting one thing when you turn in a food stamp. You're getting back food. It's not like they can't trade in a food stamp for drugs. So I feel like it's irrelevant, because I feel like the concern would be that they're going to use like the money or the support to go and buy drugs and support an unhealthy lifestyle. But I feel like that's irrelevant to this, because it's a for sure thing that if you give them food stamps, they can only redeem it for food. I don't think that drug tests should be mandatory for people applying for food stamps. I think that food is a right and not a privilege, and it doesn't matter what your status as a drug abuser or user is, and it's just about treating people like human beings instead of, you know, trying to dehumanize them by putting them through drug testing for any reason, really. I feel like drug testing should be removed from society generally, like for jobs even, because it's kind of fucked up.
I don't think so. I think that food stamps are, you know, it's just government helping out people, and I don't think it should be mandatory just because people, you know, do drugs. It happens, but they need to eat, and sometimes food stamps is the only way they can do that. So.
Well, I believe drug tests, period. I don't agree with them because if you use a certain substance, it doesn't reflect, you know, the type of character you are. If someone's applying for food stamps, a drug test really, it shouldn't have any weight on whether or not they're eligible. You know, I'm sure that they probably have people that they have to support. They have families and wives and children, and a person needs to eat, of course, and so there's no reason that if a person's doing drugs or anything, they shouldn't be eligible for support.
Oh yeah. I believe yes. I actually worked last year for DCPS, and of course in DC, you have a huge population of people who are on welfare. I even had students who were on welfare and actually had food stamps. He was an 18-year-old male who was married. The thing is with the whole food stamps, especially in the urban community where I am from, you know, I've seen you have a lot of people who milk the system and get a lot of food stamps, and they're not even using that food for the family. They'll use the hustle is getting the food and then selling it to get more money so they can, you know, pay for their drug habit. So because of that, the whole purpose, you can't just help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. So what this does is it helps people get clean as well as helping them survive. I mean, it's one of those things where it's just a tough love situation. And unfortunately, yeah, it's a bad situation for them, but if you want help, you got to help yourself. And that's just what I believe.
I'm rather impartial on that topic. I believe that while it would be beneficial to be mandatory because of the fact that, you know, that money could also be used for, you know, other things. But at the same time, I think it's also a bit of a violation of the rights and privacy of the person. So it's kind of a win-lose situation either way. But overall, I'm very impartial about it. I can't really take a side.
I think that drug tests should be mandatory for people who are applying for food stamps because, I mean, I don't think it's fair if you're taking drugs or if you're homeless or something. You need money, right? But you're spending money on something that's not for food stamps. It's not fair for other people who aren't doing drugs and who aren't spending money on that illegal issue. But, I mean, I think it should be mandatory, yes.
Yes, I think they should be mandatory because there's a lot of people out there who honestly would just spend the money that they get on anything. And I just think it's important for all the tax dollars and everything that goes into it to go to a better cause and not to things that people are just going to be careless with.
Okay, if it's a priority to drug test people applying for food stamps, then it should be a priority to drug test our representatives in Congress and the government.
No. No, I don't think so because whether the person's indulging in drugs, I don't think that should matter if he or she applies for food stamps. He or she may really need those food stamps, so why should drugs have anything to do with feeding yourself, nurturing yourself, anything like that?
No, that seems both ineffective, discriminatory, and expensive.
Absolutely. I think that if they're getting government funds, that they should be responsible individuals, and that kind of includes not being under the influence of drugs and alcohol when food stamps are going towards bettering their family.
No, I don't think so because everyone needs to eat, and I feel like drugs shouldn't affect people trying to be free.
I honestly don't really know. I feel as if drug tests should be mandatory for a lot of things, but at the same time, it depends what drugs you're testing for. I think that the entire food stamp and sort of welfare program started out as such a good idea and sort of a great concept, and for the time it was implemented, it worked very well. But I think now it's escalated to a point where people are taking advantage of it, just like a lot of other government programs, and maybe that it should be eliminated as a whole, so there won't be such a standard of, as long as I can get food stamps, I can survive, that people actually start working and trying to find jobs. Even though it is hard, I believe that once you eliminate the lowest standard and raise up everything else, then everyone else is forced to come up.
Yeah, I feel as if drug tests should be mandatory for people who are applying, because drugs can be a reason basically for laziness, not going out and trying to find a job.
No, I personally think that it shouldn't be mandatory.
Well, I believe that certain drugs should be legalized. It shouldn't be legal. And alcohol and cigarettes I consider drugs, but they're legal. So I don't necessarily think it's appropriate. I think there should be other factors taken into consideration when applying for welfare.
I say nay. I find that quite fucked up. I feel as though that in doing that, they are really utilizing power and groups of people who are lower class or impoverished to just obtain them and keep them down from achievement or life, and everybody, including myself and our peers around us and everyone in the whole entire globe, needs to eat some fucking food and get fed and have a full fucking tummy. And by doing such an act as drug testing, you're really fucking up a whole Christmas. You're screwing over a lot of lives. I feel that that's not fair. It's cruel. It's inhumane. And drug testing has absolutely nothing to do with the right to be fed and obtain food within your tummy.